I moved to Widow's Creek to escape. The divorce had left me shattered, and Noah, my 7-year-old son, deserved better than the cramped apartment and constant tension we'd been enduring. The farmhouse, my grandmother's abandoned estate, offered a fresh start, or so I thought. The place stood on the outskirts of town, surrounded by gnarled trees and whispering fields. Dust coated every surface, and the air carried an ancient stillness, as though the house itself had secrets it was too weary to keep. From the moment I stepped through the work front door, something felt off. Not wrong, exactly, just expectant. Noah seemed unfazed, bounding to the echoing halls like any child his age, his laughter piercing the gloom. It was his enthusiasm that kept me from turning around and leaving. We settled in quickly. Widow's Creek was desolate, its main street lined with boarded-up shops and crumbling facades. But the locals, what few there were kind enough, their eyes lingering on me just a little too long when I mentioned the farmhouse. "You've got guts," one elderly woman said with a nervous laugh, handing me a jar of homemade preserves. "That place has history." I shrugged it off, attributing her wariness to small-town superstition. I told myself the uneasy feeling in my chest was just nerves. Then came the Halloween fair. Noah was ecstatic as we wandered through the patchy carnival. He tugged at my hand, leading me to booths with sagging tents and peeling paint. The crowd was sparse, their voices muted beneath the strange sound of calliope. A chill crept in as the sun set, and the shadows stretched long and sharp across the trampled grass. "Mom, look." Noah pointed to a booth tucked at the edge of the fairgrounds. A single lantern flickered inside, casting distorted light on a grinning jack-o'-lantern painted on the faded canvas. A man stood behind the counter, his face hidden behind an intricate black mask. His gloved hands cradled an array of strange wooden toys. Noah's eyes lit up at a spindly marionette with cracked paint and hollow eyes. "Can I try?" Noah asked eagerly. The man's voice was low and smooth. "A single toss. That's all it takes." Noah threw the ring, and it clattered around the neck of a rusted hook. The man's laughter was deep and unsettling as he handed over the marionette. "Take care of it," he said, his tone a whisper that crawled under my skin. "It's older than it looks." "That night," the whispers began. At first, I thought I imagined them, a soft, susurrating hum that seemed to emanate from the toy. I crept into Noah's room, my heart pounding, only to find him sound asleep, the marionette propped against his pillow. The whispers grew louder over the next few nights, mingling with the creaks and groans of the house. Noah's behavior changed, too. He spoke to the toy in hushed tones, as though it were alive. When I asked who he was talking to, his answer froze my blood. "It's the man from the fair," he said simply. "He comes to visit." I confiscated the toy, shoving it into the attic. But that didn't stop the dreams. They started with the masked man. He stood at the edge of a clearing, flames licking at the hem of his cloak. His voice echoed, repeating a single phrase, "Your blood knows." During the day, I began finding cryptic notes scrawled in an elegant hand, tucked beneath my pillow, taped to the bathroom mirror, even inside Noah's lunchbox. They spoke of my family, of debts unpaid, and wrongs to be made right. The final straw came one stormy night. Thunder rattled the windows, and shadows danced across the walls. Noah screamed, a raw, guttural sound that yanked me out of bed. I raced to his room, but he was gone. I found him in the living room, standing in front of the marionette, which now rested on the mantel. How it had come down from the attic, I didn't know. Noah turned to me, his eyes wide with fear, his voice trembling as he pointed to the corner of the room. "He's here," he whispered. The shadows shifted, coalescing into a figure. The masked man. His presence was overwhelming, a tide of rage and sorrow that pressed against my chest. His hand raised, and I saw the sigil carved into his palm, a twisted mark that pulsed with an unnatural light. "Your family stole everything," he said, his voice reverberating through the room. "And they paid with blood, but not enough." I stumbled back, my mind racing. The next morning, I scoured the town's archives, piecing together the story. Widow's Creek had been built on stolen land. My ancestors had orchestrated a massacre, slaughtering an entire settlement to claim the fertile ground. The masked man was one of the victims, his spirit bound to the land and seeking vengeance. There was only one way to end it, under a moonless sky. I took the marionette to the town's central square. The air was electric, humming with the weight of the past. I doused the toy in gasoline and lit a match, watching as the flames consumed it. The masked man appeared, his form flickering like a dying ember. "The debt is not paid," he said, his voice mournful. "But I will wait." I turned to Noah, horrified to see the sigil now etched into his forearm, glowing faintly. He looked up at me, his expression unreadable. "We'll be okay, Mom," he said softly. But I wasn't so sure. We left Widow's Creek the next morning. The farmhouse was abandoned once again, its secrets left to rot. But the mark remained, a constant reminder that some sins can never be erased. We arrived at the lighthouse late Friday afternoon, the sky already heavy with the promise of rain. The structure was a towering sentinel on the cliff's edge, its weathered stone exterior and rusted railings evidence of decades of battles with the elements. Emily and I had inherited the place from a distant uncle, one we'd only met twice. He'd always spoken of the lighthouse with reverence, and now it was ours. The storm set in quickly after we arrived. The wind howled like a living thing, rattling the windows, while waves battered the rocks below. Inside, the lighthouse felt like a relic of another era. Its winding staircase spiraled up into darkness, and the faint scent of salt and mildew hung in the air. We set up our small lantern on the kitchen table and brewed tea, hoping the warmth would drive out the pervasive chill. It was Emily who first noticed something strange. She paused mid-sip, her head tilted to one side. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice low. I strained my ears over the storm. "Hear what?" "Echoes," she whispered. "From below." The thought unsettled me, but I shrugged it off. It's just the wind. Old buildings like this have a way of amplifying noises. Still, her unease nagged at me, so I grabbed a lantern and headed toward the lower chambers. The stairs creaked beneath my weight as I descended. The damp air grew colder, and the smell of mildew grew stronger. The basement was a cavernous, uninviting space with thick stone walls. My lantern flickered, its weak glow casting long shadows. I saw nothing unusual, though the atmosphere was oppressive. The heavy iron door leading outside was locked tight. Satisfied, I made my way back upstairs and reassured Emily, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. At midnight, I woke to Emily shaking me. "David," she whispered urgently, "wake up." My heart pounded as I sat up. The storm still raged outside, but inside the room, there was another sound, shuffling footsteps. I followed her gaze to the window. A shadowy figure stood there, unmoving, staring out at the storm. Its shape was indistinct, but there was something deeply wrong about it. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling. The figure turned, and I swear its face was nothing but darkness. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. Emily was shaking beside me. We didn't sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning, we discovered claw marks on the walls of the stairwell, jagged grooves carved into stone itself. Emily's face paled when she saw them. "How is that even possible?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't have an answer. Later, as I explored the lighthouse, I stumbled upon a diary tucked away in a rusted metal box in the basement. The cover was warped and the pages yellowed with age, but the writing inside was legible. It belonged to a former keeper, a man named Arthur Calloway. At first, the entries were mundane, daily tasks, weather conditions, and maintenance notes. But as I read on, the tone shifted. Arthur wrote of hearing voices, seeing figures in the shadows, and feeling an oppressive presence watching him. The isolation is unbearable. One entry read, "The silence is louder than the storm." I see her now, standing in the corner, her eyes like burning coals. She whispers my name. The final entry was scrawled in frantic, uneven handwriting. "The lighthouse must have blood. It demands it. I can't escape. No one can." Emily found me sitting on the basement floor, the diary in my trembling hands. "What is it?" she asked. I handed it to her, without a word. That night, The storm intensified. The wind screamed, and the waves crashed so hard it felt as though the lighthouse itself might collapse. We decided to leave first thing in the morning, but when we ventured down to the dock at dawn, our boat was gone. The rope that had tethered it was frayed, as though gnawed by something sharp. "We're trapped," Emily whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. We hurried back to the lighthouse, hoping to radio for help, but the radio was dead, emitting only static no matter how much I adjusted the dials. That's when we heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps ascending the spiral staircase. They were slow, deliberate, and impossibly loud. "Someone's here," Emily said, clutching my arm. I grabbed a lantern and opened the door to the stairs. The light revealed nothing but an empty staircase. "Stay here," I told her, though my voice betrayed my fear. I climbed the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. At the top, I found the lightkeeper's room. The massive lens of the lighthouse was still intact, though streaked with grime. As I inspected the room, I felt a chill creep up my spine. The door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. The lantern flickered violently, and in its dim glow I saw him, Arthur Calloway. His figure was gaunt and twisted, his hollow eyes staring into mine. "You should have stayed away," he rasped. I stumbled backward, but he didn't move. Instead, he faded into the shadows, leaving me gasping for breath. When I returned to Emily, she was staring out the window. "We're never leaving, are we?" she asked, her voice distant. I didn't have the heart to answer. The next few days blurred together in a haze of fear and exhaustion. We tried everything to escape, but the storm never let up, and the lighthouse seemed to conspire against us. Doors locked on their own. Shadows moved where there shouldn't be any, and the claw marks on the walls grew deeper. I began to hear whispers, just as Arthur had described in his diary. Emily stopped talking altogether, her eyes vacant as though she'd already resigned herself to our fate. One night, I woke to find her gone. Panicked, I searched the lighthouse, calling her name. I found her in the basement, standing before the iron door. "He wants us to stay," she said without turning around. "Emily, come back upstairs," I pleaded, but she didn't move. The next moment, the door burst open and darkness engulfed us.